Hello, everyone. Here we are, and you can see we have a special guest, Anna and Robin, here for the Tipsy Realtor, and Sam from Property Law, our local real estate lawyer expert, is to talk to us today about the fact that how to sell your house when having insurance claims. But of course, first we're going to make them drink.
Exactly. Yes. So welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. And
He's so tall.
I know it was you did just our camera several times, right?
All right. Yeah. So we're going to start with a drink. So you start with a Collins glass full of ice. Pretty simple. Mm-hmm. Sorry, let's throw the recipe on there. Okay. This is a super simple drink, and actually I'm kind of excited to try it because it has lychee liqueur in it.
I hope the warmers me up. I'm freezing. I'm wearing a big sweater. Robin wears a dress. We're like, no, not matchy today.
We're not matchy. You said I look like a bride.
She looks like she's going to a wedding. Well, to be honest, when I got married, I married in jeans and a white sweater. So
did you really?
Yes. So there you go. I'm wearing my wedding dress today.
All right. So we're throwing in the dark rum, and then we've got the ginger beer, topping it off.
Dark rum,
lychee liqueur, ginger beer. So what I always do is my kind of tester is with these is if I'm going to feed it to my husband.
Okay.
Oh, yes. You know what? Hang on.
Straws. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll put those in. Yeah.
Straws.
Drinks that already made.
And then we're garnishing it with the dried flowers, which I got off Amazon, and a lime wedge.
Yeah, it looks super pretty. Here you go. Your pretty drink.
Thank you very much.
Drink.
Yes. I know. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome.
Oops, sorry.
There you go. Let's,
That's okay.
I got it.
Actually, that's really good.
It's like unexpected. I forgot the ginger beer.
Yeah, ginger beer.
Yeah.
Delicious.
The ginger beer and the lychee.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet.
This is actually, I could totally drink this on a patio.
Yep.
This is a good summer
drink.
This is
going to be a dangerous drink on the patio because you don't taste any alcohol.
I know, right? That actually is really good.
Actually, because Robin is, so I said, Robin, what are you going to use Zaya for? And that's how at Trinidad rum, which you usually sip straight. But if you ever tried it, it's actually quite sweet and caramelly on its own.
Really?
Mm.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, okay, so I'm going to show you because I actually love this rum.
Put it in.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so it's a sipping rum. That's the one you want.
You really shouldn't use it for cocktails, but it's the only dark rum I had.
But because that's what she had, that sweetness and that strong caramel flavor, it comes through the drink. But if you would use like a regular dark rum, like you would have a little bit less sweetness to it, and it would be probably more gingery.
Well, I think that the lychee liqueur puts a lot of the sweetness in too.
Mm.
Yeah, lychee liqueur.
Lychee liqueur, which is actually when we made our book. So we always make our cocktail journal like in July. Yeah. This was one of the reasons I put in the lychee cocktails was to try and get rid of this liqueur.
I've never even seen this one before. Well, cool. We'll try something new today, that's for sure.
I think I'm definitely serving this to Clint tonight.
I think it's a great patio drink for sure. And I think you can even make like a big batch of it. And it's super easy. Like, you know, you can just kind of, it's super easy to make in batches and just kind of add your ginger beer to everybody, right? So it's kind of nice.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
So now down to business.
Insurance claims.
Insurance claims when you're selling your home. Now, a lot of people don't realize that they can sell their house with an insurance claim, and we always get to explain that to them. But they're concerned about how that's going to work in the contract. So we have a standardized Alberta real estate document for when there is an insurance claim. But there is a challenge with that document. And I'll tell you right now from a realtor standpoint, the challenge with that document is it states in that document that if the insurance claim isn't settled by a certain date, that the seller has to forfeit the holdback. And obviously no seller wants to do that. Yeah. And no seller wants to do that because they're like, well, the insurance company's doing it, and how can I control when the insurance company is going to complete the work on my insurance claim? So let's start at the beginning. You have an insurance claim on your house. We even had it last year where we actually had houses conditionally sold or firm sales, and the hail happened.
Right.
What's the first steps you should take?
Yeah, so I always recommend that we sort of think about this from different perspectives, because obviously we might be in a different position with the deal, and my advice would change depending on where we are. right? So if you have, for example, a listing, but there is no contract in place, and there is, an insurance claim that's been started, or there's been hail damage that's occurred to the property, say right before you were about to do an open house. My advice always in that situation to the sellers is, look, you bear responsibility for the property. You bear the risk to it. So the correct thing to do is, contact your insurance company, get a claim started right away, push the insurance company as much as you can to get an adjuster to the property so they can come and do an inspection of the property, because we know there's timeliness that's required for that to happen. And sometimes the insurance company will take their time, but do what you can to motivate them.
You have like hundreds.
Exactly.
Hundreds of claims at the same time, right?
Yeah. That's... making it known to the insurance company that the property is up for sale, right? That these things need to move faster.
Yeah.
And then my goal is to try and get that insurance adjuster to produce a scope of work for an improved insurance claim, showing what items need to be fixed, what items are going to be covered, and what the cost of it is going to be. And then I typically recommend that clients use that document to guide the next steps. I'm a big fan, actually, of the Alberta Real Estate Association's insurance claim addendum. I think it does a really good job. I think it's a very fair point to say, well, sellers are afraid that they're going to lose that amount because there's a rectification date in there.
And that they don't have control.
And they don't have control over it because it's an insurance company. And what I recommend, and this is the same advice that I give to buyers as well, is let's all try and be reasonable, and let's set that date well into the future. Accounting for the fact that some of these repairs are going to be done on a seasonal basis, and they might not get done depending on when the claim is made until the following year, until the following spring.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes availability of the materials and such also, because certain things are on the back order or not available anymore. You have to find siding that doesn't exist anymore.
That's
now,
right.
I will let you guys know that if you do have an outstanding insurance claim, we actually have a company that works really closely with us that has been able to go out and get people, even though their insurance companies weren't able to do it, but the insurance company allowed this company to go out and do it and get their claim started faster, because of the fact that she somehow can get all of the estimates and the adjustments, and she can go out and do all the estimating for the insurance company, and she works directly with us, and the insurance companies are using it, and we've been able to get people their insurance claims started within 2 weeks because of her, which is
that's
amazing.
excellent. That's excellent.
But you have to work with us.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and time is not on your side in a lot of these situations, because the market picks up right at the time when it starts to hail, right? So we'll get lots of deals that'll get put together in May or in June, some with pretty quick possessions, and then there'll be a freak storm. And then all of a sudden you have a deal that might be conditional and there's damage.
Yes.
And in that situation, my advice is still the same. Try and use that addendum if possible. Try and get an adjuster to produce an approved scope of work that you can then attach to that addendum, and use the amount that's in that approved scope work to inform how much the holdback amount is. And then the really tough ones are June 30th closing and June 27th storm, right? And at that point the deal is firm, everyone's excited. 72 hours from now we're supposed to be buying our new house, but now there's a whole bunch of damage to it. And I think a lot of it comes down to setting expectations. Like, you might have kind of checked out if you're the seller. This place is not mine 3 days from now, but the reality is that contract says you're still responsible for it. So the correct thing to do is to still contact the insurance company and try to get an adjuster to the property as soon as possible. In those situations, when that deal is firm, I think you really have to, as agents, for sure, pass the torch to the lawyer. Because in that situation, the contract is firm. It's the lawyer's job to enforce the terms of the contract. And what we're trying to do in that situation is work with as much information as we can get. And often what I'll try and do, for example, if I'm on for a buyer, is I'll say, look, you got to start that insurance claim. We're not going to have an approved scope of work. So let's use that insurance claim addendum, but let's build some additional language in there to say the holdback's going to be X amount of dollars, which is going to be more than the scope, right? Just based on taking a conservative approach. And let's agree that once that approved scope of work is available, we'll adjust the holdback amount so that there isn't an unnecessary amount of money tied up in trust. And then, set that rectification date well into the future, everyone keeping cool heads to understand that sometimes it takes a long time for these things to get done. And what might seem reasonable this year just doesn't seem reasonable with hindsight, right? Like if you have damage that takes place because the hailstorm is in August, and the possession is in late September, and the insurance claim doesn't really get moving until September, chances of them doing the work that fall is low. There's a really good chance that a bunch of the work is going to get done the following spring. So setting the rectification date, 90 days in the future might not be nearly enough time. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of it I think comes down to coaching people and setting expectations as best we can.
So I think number one, if something happens, you guys call your insurance company. Then you call your realtor. You notify your realtor because like we don't know whose house got hit or not, right? And then depending where we are in the process, the realtors and together with the clients will notify the lawyers to make sure, because like if somebody calls me and I have a deal that is closing, I was like, call your lawyer, because there's some people like not sure what they do, right? They start freaking out. They do all the wrong steps instead of trying to contact the professionals that will be saving them time.
Well, and there's nothing, and I tell people this in real estate, there's nothing that hasn't really happened in real estate already before. There's been so many property transactions that we've probably already dealt with this before. The lawyers have dealt with it. There's case law somewhere. It's nothing is new in real estate. We're not breaking any new ground in real estate when it comes to transactions. So it's not the first time a hailstorm has happened in the midst of a transaction. Here's the one thing that we do get all the time is when we list houses now, I actually routinely have to tell clients, have you confirmed that you don't have any insurance hail damage? Have you had your insurance company out since the last hailstorm? And they say, no, I don't have anything. I checked, or I only had two holes in my
siding. Did the walk around.
And that's great. But now there's something called shingle bruising. And shingle bruising, if you have more than 20 spots of shingle bruising, you now have an insurable claim. And the only person who can manage the claim or claim the claim is the person who had the damage at the time of the property. And then the other thing that we've had is where people come and they're like, the seller's like, well, I'll just take the cash and I'll give it to the buyer and I'll do that. You correct me if I'm wrong. You can't do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to potentially cause issues for the buyer and their financing as well, right? Most people, I think, who are buying homes are getting mortgages. Most of those mortgage lenders are going to want to be aware of any sort of ongoing insurance claim to a property and have all that information disclosed to them, because that, of course, is affecting the marketability and value of the property.
Of course.
So, yeah, no, my recommendation, if at all possible, is to follow that structure, which I outlined, and use that insurance claim addendum. And, although it happens every year, seemingly, it doesn't happen every single month. And so the transactions are somewhat unique in that, depending on, you might just be the unlucky person that year, right? Who has the insurance claim that happens on their house right at the time of closing. And it's not something that gets dealt with every single day. Like the law firms aren't dealing with insurance claims on every single closing, but we are used to dealing with it on a seasonal basis. And there's a structure for dealing with it. And I think that the best thing that we can do is, coach clients on expectations, follow that structured process as well as we can, make our decisions based off of information provided from professionals rather than just, pulling numbers out of thin air.
Because my neighbor said.
Or like making a mountain out of a molehill, which is a good point too, because, you can read in the news, oh, hail, but the reality is it's pretty localized. It's not that if there's a hailstorm in all of Calgary is all of a sudden every single house has suffered hail damage. It'll be certain quadrants of the city. Sometimes you'll get it. And I had this one last year where there was a property in Rocky View County that got sold. And, the buyers were of the opinion that there had been significant hail damage of a recent storm, but that storm didn't even hit that area. But they were, under the impression that it had, because, little things that you'll see in things like soffits and eaves trough, right? And that can be making a mountain out of a molehill.
Well, I know we had quite a few listings and purchases last year after that storm. And like we literally, even like here, one of our properties got hit pretty hard here. Like, you came there, like the trees, like everything was on the ground. And you drive 2 blocks up and it was like nothing. It's like, and it's the same community, like literally 2 blocks up, and it was a huge difference.
Well, so what happened with your people? The buyers had to suck it up?
Fortunately, eventually the buyers sort of backed down in that situation and acknowledged they didn't have much to support the position,
they had
right?
To prove it,
so, for example, if and you're not always going to have this information, but if you had identical photographs from a property inspection showing the roof, and then you could get up there and take another photo and clearly show that there'd been a difference between when the inspection was done and now, then you would have, I think, documents to support the position. They didn't in that situation, so we ended up closing the transaction. But it is something to keep in mind too when we start talking about the length of time between now and closing, right? If you've got a listing and you've got competitive offers that are on the table, like it's one thing to keep in mind. If someone's offering to buy your place in 30 days, but someone else is offering to spend a little bit more money for 90 days, right? Because they want that time. You have to realize as a seller, you're exposing yourself to 60 more days there of responsibility for the property, and who knows what will happen, right?
I never even thought about it like that, but that's a good point.
I know, right? It's like, so when we say like, you you guys want to close in 30 days because we don't want to just get paid really fast.
Yeah.
Because
actually, it's a really good point.
It's just something you should think about, because I think that, psychologically, I can understand a lot of buyers will get a firm deal and they'll somewhat check out in terms of responsibility for the property, because to them they think, well, this isn't going to be my place long term. But the reality is, it is your place. You are responsible for it. You're responsible for it until the buyer pays you the money.
And so most of our hailstorms, like I'm just throwing this out there, but I think most of our hailstorms is May, June, and July. And with May, June, and July is the most possession month out of the year. So understand, if anything goes wrong in July.
Well, the way May is going, we just got the snow off, the flowers are blooming. I doubt you're going to have any hailstorm with 1 week to go. Like, what's that?
Fingers crossed.
Once we say that now,
there was hail last night. I had hail last night.
Well, see, it so depends where you live.
Yeah.
But it does mean, though, like that actually June, July, and July is the most possession day of the month. So if something happens at the end of June, beginning of July, you're going to have to be patient, because between insurance companies and lawyers, everyone is slammed in our industry. And that's another thing. Like, patience is a virtue at that time of year.
Yeah.
So if you one tip or takeaway or anything to say to our viewers in terms of, besides I call your insurance first, what else can you say, like make sure they know to do it?
Like for the person who's selling the property?
Selling or buying the property, yes.
Yeah, I mean, for buyers, it's a little bit more difficult because you might not be checking up on the property every single day. I do think that, notwithstanding that, the recommendation that I have for sellers is, you're responsible for the property until the purchase price is paid. Mm-hmm. And, if there is damage, realize that, if you lived in this place for 10 years, you might not make a claim. You might look up there and think, well, it's okay, mm-hmm. But you're selling the property as the buyer agreed to purchase it in substantially the same condition as when the offer was made and accepted, right? And so the correct thing to do isn't to, make a subjective assessment to say, well, it doesn't seem so bad. And then to try and kind of punt the problem down the road, because that can just lead to more delays. Yeah. It's just to acknowledge, okay, well, there's been some real damage, or there's the potential for real damage here based on the storm that's had. Let's contact the insurance company. Let's get someone out here to figure out whether there was any damage that needs to be adjusted on from an insurance perspective. And then if there is, work with the insurance company and try and motivate them to do things quickly.
Yeah, like
one thing let them know that you're selling the house and yours kind of gets the top.
Or look around after the storm. Like, they're like, oh, storm came, like they didn't notice anything. They just move on. Like, instead of physically going to look around, see if there is any damage was caused on the outside, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, the contract says that the buyers are entitled to independent inspections to verify the property, right? So there's an argument to be made in that situation, even if the inspection has already happened, that like, look, we can't turn a blind eye to this. There was a significant storm. We are concerned that there, is potential new damage. If